Miso, a traditional Japanese dish traditionally containing either tofu, vegetables, or seafood. Sisu, a, a franchise of films that I have to review for purposes of consideration. I don't know. Anyway, I'm John Stark from MacTheMovieGuy.com. If you're a blind film critic, and we're back. We're on the road to revenge. Because when something's good, it has to be sequelized. So, Sisu, Road to Revenge, is the second film in the franchise, and I'm sure will not be the last, because this is such a relatively simple premise, and I can't imagine it costs that much to make, because they don't have to bring any stars in, and it has brand awareness, so it has a built-in fan base at this point. I really loved the first Sisu. I thought it was a breath of fresh air. It's like a mostly silent action movie that relies fully on. I know, blind guy enjoyed Sisu because it has audio description. Um, and really inventive. We found out a new way how to breathe underwater. I thought that was cool, just in case you ever need that information. You got that from the first movie. This sequel is just more of that, on like a different level. And it's just more of this over the top action stuff. There's a new villain, a new Russian played by Stephen Lang. And then I debated about, does that make this an international feature still? No, Stephen Lang's in the franchise. And my answer to that is, even though it didn't get nominated, Palestine 36 had Jeremy Irons, and that was up for consideration for the Best International Feature at this year's Oscars. So, sentimental value has Elle Fanning in it. It's really hard to say just because you have an American actor in your film that suddenly that should disqualify you from being considered international. I think the spirit of the film is still Finnish, even though there's a little bit of English in here, obviously because Stephen Lang is English. He plays Dragonolf, because who doesn't want to be called Dragonolf at some time in their life? Um, and yeah, it's Sisu, and he's another part in his life, and he's still lamenting his family. The problem is he's not Sisu, and I think that's why I like the movie a little bit less. See, before, even though he was never Sisu, like that's not his name. That's the Finnish phrase for I don't know, uncontrollable rage. Anyway, but it's a word that it's funny because they're like Sisu is a word that is impossible to translate, but means I'm like, well, it's not that hard to translate, then is it? Sisu, a Finnish word, nobody knows what it means. Okay, then leave it. Sisu. That means what do we use it? I don't know. So, um, unfortunately, we learned his name at the end of the last movie when he went to the bank, and that means this whole movie he has a name. It's like Carpal or Carp, something like that. Which means for sighted audiences, they don't like run around shouting his name all the time. So this is one of those things where actually, as a blind person, I felt like I was at a disadvantage because the audio description did have his name all the time, and I missed that he was in the first film. He was this guy we didn't know. He was this mysterious man, and there was something that was really cool about that. It was very much like the man with no name type of thing. Like who is he? You know, he was like a symbol for something, almost like El Mariachi, like this, like what is he? I don't know. He's a mysterious man, Zorro. Like, it could be anybody. Now he's just like a guy. Like I feel like I know too much about him now, and it's just he's got pictures of his family and he's got a name, and I don't know. It just there's something about hearing his name all the time instead of him being defined as just a guy, that kind of actually took a little bit of wind out of the sails. Now the action sequences were still extraordinary, but for me, hearing his name like 187 times in the audio description was well, a little bit like 187. It's a little murdered for me. So I was a little deflated in the sequel, and it's not that I didn't like it; it's just I didn't love it. Like Sisu was one of my favorite films of that year, easily. I think I had it as best international feature for that year just because of the limited amount of features that come my way with it with audio description. But um, certainly the audio description track was exceptional because the film is nothing but audio description, which is what this film is. This is another exceptional audio description track. The plot doesn't really matter. Yeah, it doesn't really matter. It's a good guy. He's killing, Nazis and communists. Like I mean, like he's being thrown really easy villains. So you don't really have to know much about them or really have like a story or a history behind them. You just have to know that somehow he's been wronged by these people, and he's gonna make it right, and he's gonna fight, and he's gonna survive, and to give everybody anxiety and panic attacks, he has a dog with him for the entire movie. So all those people who go check doesthedogdie.com before every single movie are on pins and needles. But to be fair, that dog was in the last movie, so when shit hit the fan, I think the dog ran away, if I remember correctly. It's been a minute since I've seen Sisu. But I think they killed the horse, but not the dog. So, yeah, I it's nearly void of plot. It's void of any plot that is worth mentioning. It's more about action set pieces, and this one has some really cool set pieces to it. I really like the playfulness of the plane sequence. Just the way that the pilot was like smirking at him from afar, and I'm like, this is so cheesy. And that's the thing about Sisu is like some of the scenes are just over the top and cheesy. There's like a dismembered body sequence, uh, hitting against the windshield of Dragonov's car. Anyway, there's like a whole bunch of different like really over the top, bloody, violent um, action set pieces, and because they use actors that largely are not going to ask for a paycheck, um, they're just happy to be here. Uh, yeah, I'm sure it's a low cost movie because they can put all of their money into the stunts and visual effects. So it makes for a pretty easy to make action movie that ends up rewarding in some measure. So while I'm not as high on Sisu Road to Revenge, I can't completely say it didn't deliver what it was supposed to deliver. I just didn't love it as much because I didn't want to know as much about him. I don't need to know his name. I feel like we're personalizing him too much. If they make like a third film and he's like at home with like a wife and kids, and years later, I'm like, this guy was like way better off when we didn't know who he was, and he was just the guy who kicked ass, who just swept in, and he was sort of like, like some sort of like ninja in the middle of the night, enacting revenge. Like who came in there? I don't know. It was a guy. What did he look like? Everybody else. That's what makes him terrifying. So, yeah, I mean, I can understand why everybody's fresh on it. I think that probably the caveat here is I don't think it topped the first one. So, yeah, the first one was something special, which is why we have a second one. The second one just propagates the idea of why or how we could have more of them if they keep sort of this simplistic nature to it. It's sort of like what Fast and Furious never did, right? Fast and Furious 1 was cool because it was street racing and it had this cast. And if they had just been able to return that cast and done street racing movies, it would have been interesting to see how that franchise developed. But instead, they like lost Vin Diesel, and then we got Tyrese, and then it's Too Fast and Furious wasn't as good because it was like just Paul Walker and the rest of the cast was missing. And then we got Tokyo Drift, where we couldn't get any of the cast back, but then Vin Diesel came back, and then like they were like, oh, well, let's bring the whole franchise back for the fourth one, but we're still street racers. And then the fifth one, they're like, we're international spies now. It's just, I mean, it's silly, it's over the top, but it also constantly has no idea what it is. Caesar knows what it is. Caesar's like, we fought the Nazis, we'll fight the communists, blow shit up, kill people. We're all killing people that nobody's going to argue with. They don't need to know plot details or who these people are or necessarily why he's that mad at them. They're just, it's just fun to sit back and watch. And since this franchise has a better sense of self, I would say that's going to work in his favor. I think, again, I acknowledge the fact that if I could see, I wouldn't have heard his name, hundreds of times in the audio description. So he would seem more like who he was before to me. This mysterious man coming from nowhere, coming from to seek revenge, which continues to be the excellent premise behind Sisu. So I'm gonna give Sisu Road to Revenge a 7.4 out of 10. I liked it. I have a feeling I like the third movie too, but I would put these both below the first one. I think the first one was special. It has a special place in my heart as a result. The sequel just is like, we can do more of this if you want. And it's like, yeah, why not? Why not? So, yeah, I'm not mad at it. Anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. I'll see you guys on the next time.